Hello, everybody. Cam and Chris, podcast number 8. Of course, joined by my father, Chris Andrews. Dad, how's it going? Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So it has been about 4 years almost now since we have done anything in terms of podcasting. Nothing has happened in the world so far that's important or of any value in those past 4 years, right? Nothing significant has occurred.
That I can think of.
And I tend to agree with you as well. I've got a multitude of topics. Would you like to begin with your topic? Because your topic seems interesting, and I don't think I've actually heard of your topic. So
Okay. Before I start with my topic, I just wanted to say to everyone, welcome to Season 2.
Season 2. New and improved.
My only topic that I mentioned to Cameron was Elon Musk. I was just reading about him. It was either yesterday or the day before concerning Great Britain.
Okay.
And he's gotten in a bit of and I don't want to say tiffed or whatever, but long story short, he has called out the British government over people that are from, and I guess primarily from Pakistan. People primarily from Pakistan that rape Caucasian women.
We're getting right into it. We're starting off hot.
Yeah, and basically the British government has kind of swept this under the carpet, and not just rape, but and I guess their doctrine when you're from Pakistan is a non-virgin Caucasian woman in their eyes is trash. Trash. And so they will rape these women, and not just them, but then they call their buddies and their neighbors and
Gang rape.
And
there's a big gang rape problem in the United Kingdom and pretty much all over Europe. But please continue.
Okay, so Elon Musk called him out on it.
Oh, really?
And kind of
did he call out the Pakistanis or did he call out
everybody?
The UK government's lack of response.
Everybody.
Okay. It's
wrong that they're doing it, and it's wrong that the government is kind of turning a blind eye and saying, well, you're just upset because they're from another country. Kind of a thing,
Right.
We need to be more tolerant of people from other countries.
Which that's easy to hide behind.
Yeah.
That's easy to hide behind and say, you're racist, you're discriminatory. It's like, well,
yeah.
Sorry that I'm discriminatory against rape.
Yeah.
Exactly. The word discriminatory is so hyperbolized these days to where you are not allowed to discriminate against anybody, even if they're rapists, even if they're gang members, even if they're murderers. So that's how they kind of twist it and hide behind those words.
Yeah. So that was my little thing.
And so Elon called them out on it.
Yes.
How so? What did he say?
Well, just
essentially,
and kind of just what I said
okay.
Was the people that are doing it are wrong, and the people that are shielding them under a variety of different formats are wrong. It's wrong. So good for him.
So that intro part that you just said there, I could segue that into 3 or 4 different topics that I have written down here.
Okay.
But I think the best segue from that would be into my topic that I had for immigration. And this is not a new issue. Immigration is an issue, and it has been an issue for generations of human beings. I mean, for at least hundreds of years, if not more. I'm sure more. I'm sure all throughout history. And essentially, America has always been the land of the free. This idea of America that has kept it going, in terms of you can move here, it's the land of opportunity. And I wonder if back in the old days, in the early 1900s, if we were much more stingent on, when you come here, you have to adopt our values, which at the time in the early 1900s especially was Christian values. I wonder if we have totally and completely moved away from that. I mean, you can kind of see it to where people do not conform to American society. We are not necessarily a homogenous country at this point, but I feel as if in the late 1800s and early 1900s, maybe we were a little bit more homogenous in terms of we were kind of all on the same page of Christianity being our main religion, everybody speaking English, and that was just kind of how it went. To whereas now we've kind of seen this unsuccessful experiment at being a melting pot. I would like to ask you, do you think that immigration is a good or a bad thing? And let's just say, because we're American, we grew up and lived in America our whole lives. Do you think that immigration is a good or a bad thing for our country?
I think that if it is done properly, it's a good thing.
Okay.
You bring in talent. You bring in a variety of different opinions. You bring in a variety of knowledge. You bring in labor. So I think if it's done right, it's definitely a good thing. And unfortunately, it has gotten to the point where people look at it as far as, how is this good for the Republican Party? How is this good for the Democratic Party? And unfortunately, it doesn't seem that too many people in positions of power ask the question, how is this good for America?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what needs to be asked, is how can this benefit America? So that's the sad thing, is people have skewed it to, let's do this so that it benefits me and mine. And that's obviously that's wrong.
Is that capitalism or is that human nature? Do you think that?
I think that's human nature.
Do you think that that's inherently a part of capitalism? Because I feel like capitalism, especially in the modern world, people have this idea of capitalism being very cutthroat in that way that you just described, to where it's not about the benefit of the many, it's about the benefit of the few.
Well, that's not capitalism, though.
Okay.
There are being a former Marine.
Yes.
There is a thing, and there is a thing in the Marine Corps Handbook, which is 14 basic leadership traits and 10 leadership principles.
Okay.
And the 14 leadership traits, of which I should be able to list most of them, but I can't. But the things, what are the 14 leadership traits? Honesty, determination, integrity. Okay, there's 3.
Yeah.
So
I'm with you.
Okay, I'm running out.
That's about all my brain has room for. So.
Exactly. So but when you say capitalism, when people practice capitalism, that things go wrong and things.
Well, I don't think it goes wrong. I think it's very cutthroat, though.
It's cutthroat,
and it's very selfish.
But selfish is not one of your leadership traits. So when people do things in the pursuit of money, it's like, it's okay to pursue money. It's okay to enrich yourself. It's okay to, but things like, I remember, 10 years ago, when there was a big push, and it was, and I shouldn't really point the finger, but I seem to remember.
Point the finger.
Well, there was a big push about the 1%.
Yes.
in America, the 1%.
Occupy Wall Street.
Occupy Wall Street. And
Around 2012, 2013 for our listeners.
yes. So but the 1%. Well, all of a sudden the 1%, which up to that point in America, it had always been good to succeed. It had always been good to succeed and buy a big house, to buy a nice car. That had always been good. Well, all of a sudden it was villainized, and people were pointing fingers at oh well, you're a 1%er kind of a thing, and to me that was a very scary moment when that started happening. So which brings to mind around that same time frame, and as a matter of fact, it might have been a little bit after that. And I think then that and this particular incident, it happened. I want to say it was in a Washington D.C. restaurant where people were in the restaurant eating, and a crowd of people, a gang.
I think those are Black Lives Matter protesters.
I think they were.
Which I think they're a little bit different. I don't think they're necessarily about the economic thing. They're more racial. They're more racial.
That was more racial. And the bizarre thing, that whole in this group, I want to say that I believe the bizarre thing is there were no blacks in that group that was protesting for Black Lives Matter.
Just rich white people.
And they were in this restaurant screaming at people, screaming.
I remember that.
And saying to them, raise your fist in support of us. Raise your fist. And there was one lady that wouldn't raise her fist, and they were right, in the restaurant. And there was one girl that was screaming at this woman, saying, well, if you don't, we're gonna. I can't even remember what their threats were, but you have to raise your fist in support of us. You have to. And the lady was like, no, I don't. I don't. And they were screaming, and I've always found that an intriguing thing is, when confronting a mob, when confronting a group, you can't confront the group.
You're not going to win.
You're not going to win. You have to, and to me, the only possibility is to single out one person.
Yep.
And say, you with the orange hair, what are you doing here? What is your story? What is your situation? Why are you the mouthpiece and nobody else is speaking? What's going on here? Kind of a thing. So
I think what you're talking about, I hear you. I feel like the recent killing of that healthcare CEO.
Yes.
I feel like that kind of puts a spotlight on the very topic that we're kind of talking about right now, which is class warfare. And there's kind of an unofficial social hierarchy in America between the poorest people and the richest people. And the fact that so little people are even able to sympathize with the healthcare CEO. They don't, the news, Fox News and all that, they say, oh, he had a family and blah, blah, blah. But most people don't care. Most people don't care that he had a family. Most people don't care about that. They don't feel any sorrow for him because of his position as an extremely affluent person, and also B, somebody that is the head of a company that frivolously treated so many human lives. And I don't know how well versed you are on the whole Luigi Mangione subject, but
a little bit.
But the healthcare CEO, he approved the use of AI in terms of their claims either being accepted or rejected. And since they implemented that AI system, I think it was, and I might not get the exact percentage, but it was a significant percentage higher of rejections. Okay. So after they implemented this AI system, a significantly higher percentage of healthcare claims were then rejected because of this AI system to save a buck. And everyday American citizens will not sympathize with somebody like him. And many people applaud Luigi for killing him. I don't want to say one way or the other of whether I think that's good or bad. I honestly can kind of see it from both perspectives. I can see why people are in support of him being killed, and I can see why it was, not a good thing that he was killed. But think about, from an observation standpoint, think about the precedent that sends for the entirety of America and the entirety of the world. Because the response to that was all of a sudden all these big websites no longer have the CEO's picture on their website. Many different websites that were big, high-profile places took down all the information about their CEOs and the CEO's pictures and all that. And it's just interesting to see that all these news outlets, all these different legacy media places are saying, oh, this is so horrible that it happens. The American people don't give a shit. Most people are happy that he got murdered. Now, does that mean that most Americans are bad people? Or does that mean that most Americans are fed up with the broken system and the broken structure of our country? What do you think?
I think, I don't want to say most, but the broken structure. There's definitely some work that needs to be done. If I was on Luigi Mangione's jury, what I know about the case so far as him lying in wait with a 3D printed gun, and I've seen the videos of him shooting the dude in the back. Just the little tidbits that I know about the case, guilty. Death penalty, guilty.
There's no way he gets convicted. It's going to be a hung jury.
Well, we'll see. But I do know that you look at the statistics, and I love statistics.
Okay. Facts. Straight facts.
I love the facts.
Raw data.
And, the statistics are, if you look at people over 50, and I'm just paraphrasing. There was like three groups as far as age, and it was like over 50, people over 50, like 85% of them have a problem with what he did. Okay, like over 85%.
Wow.
Between 50 and 30, like 65% of them have a problem with what he did.
Mm-hmm.
Under 30, like 25% of them have a problem with what he did.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you explain the difference as far as how age affects that equation? How do you age?
I think I can.
How does age affect somebody being murdered?
I think I can explain it. I think it's because a majority of people that are older grew up with legacy media being the only option. Fox News, CNN, that was the only option. Newspapers to get your information. Now we have this vast universe of information known as the internet, where you can get information, raw information, straight from the horse's mouth. And everybody has a cell phone now. So everybody can record it and post it. Boom. There's no censorship. There's no Big Brother getting in the way. Now, Big Brother is trying his best to get in the way of the internet for sure. But it is still, I hate to say it, but the internet is the best resource for free speech in the world.
I agree.
And because people that are around my age, I'm 27 now, I tell people I'm a member of the 27 club, but I'm not, because I'm still here. So my generation grew up with the internet, and that is the main place that we get all of our information from. And I think my generation has understood much better than any previous generation in history. We understand the fact that all of the people in power do not give a fuck about us. They don't care about our lives. They don't care about our daily struggles. The rich get richer. The poor stay poor. The power structures are enormous, and they've been in place for a long time. And I think we understand that 99.9% of things that we see put in front of us are meant to manipulate us in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And I think that we simply have a better understanding of that. Now, can every man in my generation change a tire?
Well, with a YouTube video.
With a YouTube video, and once again, I hate to say it, but the internet is a fantastic resource in that way. But can every guy in my generation and younger, can they change a tire? Probably not.
Without a YouTube video? Yeah, well, okay,
probably
that's
not.
a dicey subject.
But then again, if you want to really get into the nitty gritty of it, can we blame them when for the past 50 years, I'll be generous and I'll say only the past 50 years, we have seen the complete destruction and degradation of the family structure. Fathers are not fathers. Many men, and I mean, even just the people that I've spoken to in my lifetime, the amount of young men like me that grew up without fathers is staggering. I've met probably hundreds, if not thousands, of young men around my age that grew up without a father. Mm-hmm. So can you really blame them that they don't know how to change a tire, that they don't know how to do these things that everybody says, oh, as a man you should just know how to do that? Well, it's easy to say if you had a father growing up, if you had that resource available to you.
A side story.
Okay, let's hear it.
One time when I was a kid, my dad was working on something, and I can't remember what, but it was some tools, and it was in the basement of our house. And I want to say like 9 or 10 years old, and he said, go get me a 7/16 wrench.
Yep.
And this is my chance to shine,
It says it on the wrench.
So I run over to his tool drawer and I open it up, and there's 97 different tools there and 3 or 4 different shelves, drawers, and I'm looking, and I think he wanted like a 7/16 box end wrench.
Okay.
And I was like, I don't know what a box end wrench is, and I don't even think at that age that I knew what the fractions were. So I grab a handful of wrenches, like 5 or 6 wrenches, and I go running back, and I kind of, here they are. And he looks at him, and he's kind of, and he gets to about, no, I said 7/16, and it's like, oh, okay, well, so I was close.
None of them were it. Though.
Yeah, none of them were it. So I run back, and I grab another handful, and okay, how about this, And he looks, oh, Jesus, I'll get it myself, But I'm thinking to myself, I was smart enough, though, to think, at 9 years old or whatever, it's like, Dad, you couldn't call him out on it. But
right.
But it's like, I'm thinking to myself, Dad, it isn't like they have tool identification classes in the elementary school that I go to.
That's true.
Dad, that's on you that I don't know what a 7/16 box end wrench is. That's on you. Of course, you don't call your dad out on that.
How old were you?
Like I said, like 9
years old,
8, something like that, So whatever it was, but yeah. So
I think
that's my story on the 7/16 box end wrench.
Okay, I think the internet has kind of led to. I think pre-internet, the world had individual culture. So Japan had its own culture as opposed to Germany, and even all the different European nations. Germany had a different culture than France. France had a different culture than Great Britain, etc., etc. I feel like the internet has led to the degradation of homogenous culture. And that is called, and there's a term for it, globalism. I don't know if you've heard that term, globalism. Mm-hmm. That's what globalism is referring to, is how we used to have individual cultures, and now it's becoming one big culture because of the internet. Mm-hmm. So just an observation. Do you have any thoughts on that or any comments on that?
I don't like, and I've always looked at it from, and I think you said globalism. I've always looked at globalization.
Okay.
Which I would assume is the process of globalism.
Okay.
But, I don't, and I'll just cite an example that I don't care for, which is I'm a believer in the Second Amendment.
Okay.
It seems that people that come, I don't know what the percentages are of people, illegal aliens crossing the border that come from Mexico. But let's just say it's and it used to be totally different than what it was under 4 years of Joe Biden, waving a flag to the world saying anybody that wants to come, just come. So it totally changed. But prior to Joe Biden opening up the gate and saying anybody that wants to come can come, which is against the law. But
It was unthinkable.
yeah. So prior to that, let's just say that the number was 60%. 60% of the people that came here illegally were from Mexico. Well, you start doing polls of those 60% that come from Mexico, and you start polling them and finding out what their opinion of the Second Amendment is, and they have no interest in the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. They've got no interest in that at all. So what does that say for the Democrat platform, which is we're totally anti Second Amendment? So hey, we need to bring more of these people in and get them people to vote because they think like we do. So
I agree with you, and I mean, we've seen that all over the world. We've seen it all over European countries. France has imported so many Muslims, it's astonishing. Sweden has had a problem. I mean, pretty much all of Europe, every European nation is having a problem with, primarily from Muslim countries, Muslim immigrants, not adapting to their culture and bringing over rape culture, pedophile culture, because in many Sharia law and many things like that. And I mean, they just want voters, really. I have an issue with a lot of things that's going on in the world right now in terms of, and I kind of have this, I have in my notes here, I call it my Trump wish list. So I have my Trump wish list here. I have items that I think he should be focusing on, that I think a majority of Americans are invested in and want to see happen. But then I have the reality of what he's been talking about, which kind of, it hasn't been quite rubbing me the right way. So on my list here of Trump wish lists, I think definitely we need deportation of illegal citizens, because I think too many have been allowed into the United States over the past 4 years under President Biden. Too many, way too many. And I
don't even like to put the term president in front of Biden.
Right.
I don't.
Well, air quotes, president,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So deportation of illegals, and that whole election too. And the main thing is, like, my opinion of the Republican Party is probably at an all-time low, personally. I think I have not been happy with the Republican Party since 2020 and 2021, but even more so now, and it's only been getting worse. And I'm not saying as somebody who voted for Trump. I voted for Trump 2020 and 2024, but my opinion and my regard for the Republican Party has only been going downhill. Initially in 2021, I had a very big problem with state representatives like Peter Meyer, and also many people in Congress that are Republicans as well, because not one of them stood up to support Trump because of the election that happened, because of that wacky election, we'll call it wacky, that happened. And not one of them wanted to stand up in support of Trump and be vocally open about it, saying, wait. And especially Mike Pence's response, I think that was the ultimate betrayal to your voters. I think that is, how do you ruin your reputation with your voters in one day? That's on January 6th, that's how you do it. And he said, oh, well, it's unprecedented. No vice president has ever been the one to say, no, recount the votes, or I'm not happy with this. And it's like, yeah, Mike, you could have been the first one. You could have made history. You could have said, no, I'm not certifying this until I see proof that this is not fraudulent, that it hasn't been tampered with. But he rolled over. He rolled over from pressures from lobbyists, I'm sure, from lobbyists that we don't even know their names. I'm sure he rolled over because of that. And complete pushover pussy, was not happy with his performance. Mike Pence, I think, totally failed all Republican voters that day on January 6, 2021. I feel like he totally failed all Republican voters. And so I've had a bad taste in my mouth since that. And recently, I've had a bad taste in my mouth because it's like, okay, one of the main things that everybody's talking about is the deportation of illegal immigrants. That's a huge, huge issue. Way too many illegals are in this country as is. Now, And how has Trump responded? Recently, Trump has been talking big time about buying back the Panama Canal, buying Greenland, buying Canada, turning the Gulf of Mexico into the Gulf of America. And I think about it this way. Now think about this, right? You don't have to fix the border issue if there's no border. So it's like, hey man, I get that he's probably just trolling the Democrats at this point. He's just trolling. He's just, he's just poking at the Democrats and poking at them and fucking with them. But at the same time, it's like, I understand that that's your persona. But at the same time, it's like, man, Americans are really fucking struggling, man. The country is fucking dying because of Biden for the past 4 years. I think at a certain point, it's time to quit with the jesting and get a little more serious and talk about what's going on in the border issues and the fact that, like, I need more serious stuff from him. Does that make sense? And in terms of Israel and the funding, he is totally pro-Israel. And the shit that's going on in Israel and in Gaza right now is just totally unacceptable, I think. And the war with Ukraine and Russia, what are your thoughts on the two wars that we are essentially funding and that we're, in a way, proxies in? I mean, with the Ukraine and Russia and Israel. You can focus on one or respond to one. What do you think about the wars going on right now? And the U.S.'s involvement?
I have been totally against the United States funding the Ukraine war from the start. You dig into that, you dig into the history of that, and that started with the CIA kicking the rightfully elected president of the Ukraine out of office, like in 2014, a coup, and the name Victoria Nuland in the State Department was heavily involved with that. And Putin said all, in the teens, in the 20 teens, period, I will not allow Ukraine to join NATO. He said that. He said that, and he said that. He said, I will not have NATO on my border. And he said that. And what does the U.S. do? Oh, we need Ukraine in NATO. We need them in, and you ask NATO. No, we don't want Ukraine. Why not? Because they're corrupt. Mm-hmm. They're totally corrupt.
Very corrupt.
So that was a U.S. stance.
Yep.
That was exclusively a U.S. stance, which then, Joe Biden got his wish. His son is working for Burisma, the Ukraine energy company, and that whole thing. So,
how many trips did the Biden family have to Ukraine and meetings with Ukrainian officials before the 2020 election?
Exactly.
Many meetings.
Yeah,
it's almost as if they knew that Biden was going to win the election no matter what and give them money.
And I don't know if that was the thing or if it was just an insurance policy, of hey, we'll give you and your family millions if you can somehow get into the presidency, and you can then give us billions. That's a good investment. A 100-time investment.
It's like a meth addict selling their family's possessions for pennies on the dollar, because every billion of taxpayer money that they give Ukraine, they're getting millions in return. But they don't care, because that million's going straight into their pocket.
Exactly.
Even if it costs the U.S. billions.
Exactly.
In order to make that transaction.
Yeah. So it's kind of the situation in Ukraine now. After being, I don't know how long that war has been going on. 2 years, 2.5 years,
like
whatever.
3 years now.
3 years. Okay. So, but it's kind of the situation in Ukraine is kind of the way it was at the end of World War I in France and in Great Britain. There's a whole generation of at the end of World War I where all the men in the country were either 17 and under or 40 and older. Between 20 and 40, there was nobody. They were all dead. Mm-hmm. They're all gone. Mm-hmm. and kind of Ukraine is in that same situation. And I don't know about, specifically those ages, that block or whatever it was, but
Similar.
fill in the blanks. So and what does it all boil down to? It all boils down to when that war started. Again, you rewind the clock, and Putin was just saying, I will not allow NATO to be on my doorstep. So we've been fighting for 2.5 years now, and whatever the numbers, you could say the casualties, whatever, fill in the blanks. Casualties here for Russia, casualties here for Ukraine. The U.S. a year ago, the last time I checked, the U.S. Expenditures were like $120 billion. We were even funding retired postal workers' pensions in Ukraine.
Wow.
Yeah. All our money isn't just buying bombs and missiles. We're funding all of that stuff in Ukraine.
It's ridiculous. And yet California is burning to and
Exactly.
we don't have water.
Exactly. So, or the same thing, with that hurricane that hit North Carolina.
Yeah.
We need to send, and right when that was going on, we need to send an additional $6 billion to Ukraine.
And they only got $750. Remember Kamala Harris saying that? We're going to give you guys $750 per person as relief.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Man, some of the videos from that were wild. I remember a video of a dude, he was in his living room, and imagine, the ceiling or whatever. The water was halfway up to the ceiling here, and he's in a canoe. And he's in his canoe, and he's got his paddles, and he's in his living room.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, guys, I can't stay here too much longer, or else I won't be able to get through the doorway here. Because he had the doorway open, and he could just barely get under the doorway with the canoe. But
oh, God, that's so sad.
It's ridiculous.
So, yeah. But yeah, that whole Ukraine thing was just, and all they needed to do was just to say, Ukraine will not join NATO,
Mm-hmm.
and everything would have been fine. So but instead, and what does it boil down to? Just the U.S. has spent $120 billion. That doesn't include the stuff that Germany has sent, that Poland has sent, that Great Britain has sent, that all these other countries have sent. I would have to say that would probably, you add all that up, that'd probably be another $120 billion. And then all the stuff that Ukraine, I don't know, Ukraine probably didn't have a pot to piss in, so they didn't really put much to the war effort, but let's just say $250 billion has been spent, and guess what? It's all looking like they're going to go, well, how about to end the war, how about if we promise that we won't join NATO? And it's like, so Donald Trump is like, gee, I kind of, that was my idea 3 years ago. That's all we need to do. So as far as Greenland and all that stuff, the Panama Canal.
Should we really? That is such a low priority compared to the housing market, inflation, grocery prices. I think those things right there, the housing market, inflation for everything, and grocery prices. It's like
the thing.
Why aren't we focused on that? Because I think it's okay. It's like I voted for fucking Trump, but I'm gonna be critical of him because I want him to live up to his promises that he made to us.
Well, now let's rewind the clock during the campaign.
Okay.
And Kamala Harris. What are you gonna do to get grocery prices down?
She's just mockingbird him. She's just parroting what he says.
But she also said
she did that with the no tax on tips thing.
Yeah. If you ask Donald Trump, what are you going to do to drop grocery prices? Well, Donald Trump knows. He goes, 40% or whatever it is, and I'm just throw out numbers. 40% of the cost of groceries is the energy to get the groceries to market. So we're going to work on dropping the cost of energy across the board, which is going to reduce the cost of groceries. Kamala Harris couldn't say that. I don't know if Kamala Harris was smart enough to say that, number one, to put those things together. But even if she was smart enough, the Democrat viewpoint is, fossil energy is bad and it's evil.
I feel like Trump is strong enough. I feel like not only is he strong enough to do that and smart enough to come to that conclusion, but I also think that he needs to bump elbows with the CEO of Walmart and say, hey, you guys need to bring your fucking prices down. If I am able to get you better energy, because just because they're able to make the transportation and everything more affordable, that doesn't mean that Walmart's CEO is just going to drop the prices on anything, because they're about profits first.
Well,
so I think it takes a little bit of, and for lack of better term, I'll say it, bullying. I think Donald Trump is very good at putting pressure on people that need pressure put on them.
He is, but that exact thing of making threats to the Walmart CEO and others, Joe Biden was doing that, and that was for Joe Biden's 4 years. Joe Biden didn't want to talk about energy prices. Mm-hmm. He wanted to talk about Walmart gouging their customers. Well, the thing is if you look at commercial retail sales, the margins, they say the margins in groceries is like 1.5% as far as what you're paying versus what you're charging and what you're making. So anybody that says I want to become a multimillionaire and I'm going to do it through selling groceries, you're an idiot. Mm-hmm. You're an idiot because the margins are so tight.
Well, also I hear you, but to be fair, that market is also kind of monopolized by Walmart. And Walmart makes it impossible for anybody to make a profit off of selling groceries because they have such a huge presence in that market.
Which is a good point. But I don't shop at Walmart because of their anti-union stance.
Yep.
Because of when Walmart, and this is just my opinion. But when Walmart moves in, it kills all of the mom and pop operations in a town.
Yeah.
So I don't agree with that, and financially I don't support it. But again, that's just me. So but there are other people like me out there,
Mm-hmm. Your generation is smart because they vote with their wallet. My generation's too stupid to do that, to realize that where they put their money has impact.
And it does have impact. Mm-hmm. It does have impact, which is why I don't shop. I do have an Amazon account, and I do utilize it. But I go out of my way to not utilize it. Mm-hmm. And I will pay more in other directions rather than shop and purchase something via Amazon.
Because they've almost created a monopoly on online shopping.
And not almost.
They have, yeah. And it's kind of crazy because I used to be really big into like independent fashion brands, and it's just really cool to kind of feel like you're supporting somebody who isn't a CEO.
Sure.
It's really cool. And one of my favorite fashion brands of all time is called Vapor 95. And they make a bunch of crazy different designs. I've worn a bunch of crazy designs of theirs around you before. And I've gotten comments from people on it. But it's cool because, I've come to think of it, their location is in LA. I hope their LA location is okay. I need to check that. But they have a pretty cool inside location and everything, really cool aesthetic to it. But it's just kind of cool because it was started by like 4 or 5 people, and I've left comments and messaged their Instagram account before, and I've gotten replies from them. And it's like, okay, I've bought clothing from you guys, and I've actually like chit-chatted with you a little bit online, as opposed to, I don't know, Calvin Klein. You're not chatting with Calvin when you buy Calvin Klein. You know what I mean?
No.
So just the difference of so like you said, supporting the smaller businesses, I think there's really something to be said about that.
I agree.
One thing, and I want to move on from Ukraine and Russia, but I wanted to comment on the advancement of war technology at this time in history, because even the difference, if you go from the American Civil War to World War I to World War II, all 3 of those wars saw an advancement of technology that was unprecedented at the time. And I mean, even the Civil War with the Gatling gun, the introduction of the Gatling gun in the Civil War was a big one. And balloons, aerial combat, and then with World War I, with the first actual airplanes being used, with the nerve gas and chemical weapons being used,
trench
warfare, and then World War II, of course, with the nuclear weapons being used, and the Blitzkrieg and all of that. So where we're at now with Ukraine, I mean, literally, and I don't remember where this quote comes from, but it's a quote that everybody's fucking heard it a million times, is the wars of the future will be televised. I don't know if you've ever heard that quote before. I don't know where that came from or who said it, but I've heard it a million times. The wars of the future will be televised. That's the Ukraine war. And maybe not televised, but dude, you go onto Reddit or Twitter for 5 minutes, you type in Ukraine on Twitter, you type in Ukraine war videos on Ukraine, motherfuckers have body cams on. The amount of people that I've seen get murdered on body cam in the Ukraine war is insane. I've seen hundreds of people get killed on body cam footage, both Ukraine and Russian. That shit is crazy, man. It's literally like watching a live TV show, and you're just watching people kill each other and people die. Yeah. And you're for the first time in history, you are able to get this totally unedited, unfiltered, first-person view of what it is like to be in a no-shit gunfire to gunfire war for the first time in history. And you can just look it up right on the internet. You can just look it up and find hundreds, I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of videos of people dying from a first-person perspective on the Ukraine war. It's being televised. It's being put out for the entire world to see. We are seeing how the young men of these countries are just being thrown into the meat grinder. And we're able to see it in a way that in previous generations we were never able to see it before.
Well, that was kind of that brought things to a head in Vietnam, was
film crews.
Bringing it right into your home, on the evening news kind of a thing. So the same thing kind of happened in the 1960s, the late 1960s, with Vietnam and television and that whole thing. So now it's the internet.
That was nothing compared to what it is now, man.
Oh yeah.
It's the fact that we are seeing drone warfare.
That's, to me, the biggest of all the things that have happened. Not only, and I hope that the United States government is paying attention. Because the drone warfare, and there's a guy prior to the election, in the last weeks of the election, I started watching a lot, and I had never watched him previously, but Joe Rogan.
Oh yeah, yep.
I had never watched him previously, but in the last weeks of the election, I watched the Donald Trump interview. Yep. It was like 3 hours and 14 minutes. I watched the J.D. Vance interview, which was like 3.5 hours.
And Elon, I think, had one too.
And I watched the Elon Musk interview, which was like the day before the election or 2 days before the election. And all of them were excellent interviews. But there was another one, and I can't remember the guy's name, unfortunately. Mark Andreessen is his name, M-A-R-C.
Did you watch him on YouTube?
No, it was and it was a Joe Rogan interview with Mark Andreessen.
Okay.
And I find, and he's one of these, Wall Street. I was going to say Wall Street, but I think he owned some company. I can't remember what it was, but he's like a billionaire now. He sold whatever his company was, and he's like a billionaire. But he's one of these guys like Elon Musk. He's just a smart dude. He's just a smart dude. And he was talking about the future of warfare. And he was and it's kind of cool when you're listening to people like that, because they're talking about things that you've never heard of and never,
different
perspectives. And so he was talking about like fighter pilots. And years ago, a buddy of mine, Mike Reynolds.
Okay.
Mike Reynolds, he said he had just read or
Name
heard.
drop.
Yep, he had just heard that, and this was 20 years ago. He said the last fighter pilots have already been born. Because they're taking
Drones.
the pilot out of the equation. And I think there's a phrase of that they call it the man in the can.
Yep.
Well, they're taking the man out of the can. And Mark Andreessen was talking about that. I think that's where I heard that. But he said they've got drones that head to head with fighter pilots, and he says the drones always win. Always, not 90% of the time. The drones always win.
That's where we're headed.
That's where we're headed. Well, then not only that, but I think it was Mark Andreessen. But then he said, we're headed in the direction of without the pilot, then you don't need any of the life support systems that are inside the fighter, which means it can be smaller, which means it can be faster.
The technology is not as splintered going into different things. It can focus more on the warfare aspect.
Exactly. And
instead of accommodating.
Like G-forces, I think a man can only stand five times the force of gravity, or
for a short amount of time too.
Yes,
not for an extended amount of time.
So like 5 or 6 times the 5 or 6 G's. That's it. That's the limit. But when the man is not even in there, now they can do whatever. I don't even know what they're capable of doing. So, but they can start exceeding those limits in the pursuit of agility and warfare itself. The other thing that this guy was talking about was, instead of these, your standard Super Hornet, EF-18, E or whatever it is, Super Hornet is, a wingspan of 50 feet and a length of 50 feet. Well, all of a sudden now, instead of a wingspan of 50 feet, they're gonna be a wingspan of 20 feet and 20 feet long and a lot less expensive. So you're going to be able to build a lot more. And then since they're drones, you're going to have like a master drone that controls the other drones. And I heard that's the way China is going. Yep,
I've heard that too.
Is multiple drones attached to a control aircraft. So there's stuff that's coming out, and then that's drones as far as aircraft. Well, then how about the little robotics as far as
AI controlled sentry turret with legs.
Exactly.
So I've seen. You ever seen those dog robots by Boston Dynamics?
Yes.
Where they're like. So I've seen those, but there's been prototypes that have come out where they have sentry turrets, and you actually speak to it. You say, focus on the 2 targets behind me and put 3 rounds in each of them. And then instantaneously, as soon as you say, enter, and it taps them all the exact amount of times you said instantaneously and locks onto them. So we're heading into some Terminator type shit.
And that's the thing. I think about that movie, and it's like...
And AI and Skynet, and when did Skynet become sentient? And
I mean, it's
scary.
It is scary.
So... Man, I have so many different directions I could go with this. So, okay, let's talk about AI a little bit. So, I have so many other topics. I feel like Shane Powers when I listen to the Shane Show. And for anybody that doesn't know what I'm talking about, one of my biggest inspirations for talk radio, podcasting, whatever. Shout out to Shane Powers and shout out to Chris Vanger. Shout out to Marshall Barnes, Noah, Danny DC. Shout out to all those guys. Shane Show on the Dash Radio, DJ Ski. That was probably my biggest introduction to radio and talk radio. And one thing that Shane always used to say is, we have too many topics. I can't get to them all. He always used to say that.
You save your notes for tomorrow.
Yeah, he always used to say that. He'd be like, damn it, I have too many notes. I have too many things I want to talk about. So let's segue to AI since we're talking about furtherment of technology. I did want to get into Israel with you, but I feel like that'd be a 40-minute topic of its own. So, AI. I have noticed, just in my circles and the things that I'm interested in, that there's a big conversation about how AI is the death of art. Have you heard anything about that? Or can you infer anything into that statement? Because recently, and actually Kanye but a lot of artists have been doing it lately, have been experimenting with AI generated music videos. So Kanye has actually, I'm sorry, the artist formerly known as Kanye West, currently known as Ye. Ye has uploaded 2 AI generated music videos, and people say that on his most recent album, one of his verses was AI generated, and he kind of just threw it in there to see if anybody would notice. And I've listened to it, and it's like, I can't really tell. It sounds like him, but it kind of doesn't sound like him. So it might be AI generated. Who knows? But the thing is there were people on Spotify that were uploading songs saying that Kanye was in them, but he wasn't. They AI generated a Kanye verse and put it in their song and then claimed that he was in their song. So people think that his response to that was him putting an AI verse on his album as sort of a response to people doing that. Mm-hmm. Which I think is interesting. And that's just Ye. That's some Ye shit, because he's Kanye, right? So here's my thing, and this is just, let me just go on a tangent here. I'm imagining the future, right? I'm imagining the future, and this is what I see in the future. This is how I see the future. So, one of my favorite shows of all time is The Walking Dead. Unfortunately, the actor who plays Rick Grimes, played by the one and only Andrew Lincoln, he decided to leave the show in season 9, which means that they continued the show in seasons 10 and 11 without him, okay? He was not in the show. But in the comics, he was a big part of those stories. So they had to rewrite those stories for season 10 and season 11. They had to rewrite those stories to not have Rick Grimes in them, which he was the main character, obviously. But unfortunately, because of his decision to leave, they had to go on without him. So this is what I'm imagining 30, 40 years, maybe 50. I can go to an AI program, sitting comfortably in my living room on the couch, like I'm scrolling through Netflix looking for a TV show to watch. And I can tell my TV exactly what I want to see, and it'll make it for me, and it'll give it to me within 5 seconds. I can say, I turn my TV on. The TV says, "Hello, Cameron. What would you like to watch today?" And I say, "Oh, can you give me seasons 10 and 11 of The Walking Dead? But I want you to remake them with Rick Grimes in every episode as a main character again and pretend like he never left the show." And within 5 seconds, it will create that, because by that point, the machine learning and the AI technology will be so advanced that it'll be able to make that, create that, and give it to me within seconds. So I tell it exactly what I want to watch, and it says, "Okay, here's seasons 10 and 11 remade just for you by your specifications of what you wanted to see." Boom. And as I'm watching the show, I am editing it in real time by telling the show what I want to see. So I'm like, too much of this character, too much of that. Oh, can you give me a few more unexpected character deaths? Okay, thanks. I want a little bit more of this. And as I'm talking in real time, as the show is playing, it's remaking itself to what I want. That is what I foresee in the future in terms of entertainment. That is what I foresee happening. I see that happening. And similar to that, that's a TV show, for example. I see the same thing happening for video games, and specifically for virtual reality. Imagine you're in a virtual reality simulation of a video game, right? And you could even have your friends with you, right? All your friends have these VR headsets on, and you're playing this game. So you're in this virtual world, and as you're playing in this virtual world, you're customizing it, and you're telling it, I want to see more of this. Oh, I want more of this. Okay, add this. And the video game, as you're playing it, is changing and molding to your specifications for what you want the experience to be. That's what I kind of see in the future. What do you think?
I thought that was a pretty cool explanation of redoing seasons 10 and 11 there. The computing power that's going to require is astronomical, But we'll see. We'll see. It's it's a big world out there, and it and they say that is the limit, is the computing power. That's the limit.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And it's only going up.
And it's only going up. So, but that takes energy, and it takes a lot of energy. So they're building a lot of buildings, these big, massive buildings that are just places for data storage,
mm-hmm.
And around the world. So kind of a thing in Malaysia and Indonesia and all these places, they're building a lot of that stuff. But as much as for data storage, then there's been a lot of undersea cable cutting.
Oh yeah,
recently also.
Yep.
So you've got data storage places, and then you've got people that are dragging their anchors and cutting undersea cables.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, I mean, you grew up in an era where all the art that was coming out was authentic.
Yeah.
And so to see it kind of go from that to go from organic, from analog to digital,
mm-hmm.
What has that been like for you? Have you noticed a significant change in music, in the art, in the way that it's presented to people? Because, I mean, even back in the 70s and 80s, people were saying that too much technology was being used in music.
Mm-hmm. I read a book. About music in the mid 1980s, and it was actually at the when I was stationed at NAS Glenview in Chicago. It was at the station library, and it was a book on music. It was written in the late 1960s, so it was a kind of cool book to read about the perspective of music from the late 1960s.
Time capsule.
Yes. And one of the statements that was very profound was that, and in the late 1960s, with the psychedelic music
good shit
phase, I love psychedelic music, but one of their premises was they did not feel that you should be able to make a sound with a computer or whatever, even in the late 1960s. They did not feel that you should be able to make a sound and put it on a record that you could not duplicate in concert, that you could not play live.
Right.
So that was the big, and they were facing that in the 1960s, that quandary. So, and there are things, the Mellotron.
Yeah.
Which I love.
Me too.
I love, and I've discussed it with you as far as the one of the big songs that the Mellotron was used on was 2,000 Light Years from Home by the Rolling Stones.
That's one of the best rock songs ever made.
As far as
the Stones are good. I mean, they're popular as all get out, but still, I think they're still good. I think just because they're popular doesn't mean that they're not good. Because damn it, they're good. You ever heard "Playing with Fire"? You play with me, you're playing with fire.
Oh yeah!
Oh my god!
I actually bought their most recent album, which is Hackney Diamonds, is the name of it.
You bought that?
Yes, I did.
Really? You listened to it?
And it's good.
What do you think of the song with Gaga? You like Gaga?
I'm familiar with her.
Yeah.
But I
can't get you on microphone saying that you like Lady Gaga. Damn it, I was this close, man. I was that close.
No, you weren't.
Shout out all the little monsters out there. Shout out. Shout out Gaga.
But
the new movie sucked though. Sorry, Gaga.
Which one?
The new Joker movie.
Oh.
If they wouldn't have had her singing in it, that's one thing. It's like, okay, I understand you're an actress. That doesn't mean you need to sing in the movie too. But they shoehorned that in.
Yeah. But yeah, so the Mellotron.
Yes.
The Mellotron, you actually, and I read up on it, and it's fascinating because they took actual snippets of different tones and on magnetic tape, and then as you're playing the different keys, it's playing these snippets of the different stuff that you recorded. So you create the sounds that are in the Mellotron kind of thing, and you program it kind of a thing. So it's
kind of like a MIDI keyboard these days.
It's
okay.
It's fascinating. So but it's again though it was an analog answer to the upcoming digital revolution. So a little trivia question.
Okay, hit me.
What was the first CD that was recorded digitally, as far as in preparation?
Oh man,
It was like 1982.
Oh, I'm probably gonna get it totally wrong. Was it a Van Halen album?
No.
No. What was it?
It was, and I can't. Oh man.
Oh, you don't even know? Okay.
Well, I kind of know. It was. It was the guy from Steely Dan.
I kind of know the capital of Budapest. What is it?
Budapest is the capital of Hungary.
There you go. It's a trick question.
But the guy in Steely Dan, and his name, it'll come to me. But anyways,
Dan?
No.
Oh.
Walter Becker was the one guy in Steely Dan, and he passed away. And the other guy, Walter Becker, but it was his first solo album. It was 1982.
Okay.
And man, the more I don't think about it, bam, then it'll come.
Oh, absolutely.
So.
One of the guys from Steely Dan. That was the first ever digital recording.
It was recorded digitally.
Okay.
And they consulted with 3M as far as the magnetic tape and how.
Oh, got you.
They did all this stuff.
3M's been around that long?
Oh yeah.
As a company?
Oh
They're
yeah.
a big fucking company.
Oh yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're about ready to wrap here. Do you have any other comments you want to say to the listeners before we wrap?
I ran out of all my little witty witticisms.
All right. Do you want to rap? Do you know any rap songs?
I'm aware of that musical format.
Okay, I'm aware of it too. I'm also aware that this is Cam and Chris podcast number 8. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, night, year, whatever. We'll talk to you later. Peace out. Pray for wolves.